Namaskar. Welcome to this new session. We have been considering the concept of karma in order to understand the concept of karma shaya, which is the term that occurs in the text of Patanjali. So, while dealing with or understanding, having orientation to concept of karma, today we are coming to really understand what is really karma. And due to lack of spiritual wisdom or adhyatmic wisdom, we consider karma as whatever we do. So, karma is taken to be all our activities, our actions as karma. But for that, there is a word called Kriya. And we are messing up the Kriya with karma and karma with Kriya. So, point is, we think whatever we do is karma. But this is a major flaw. This is a very, very major ignorance. What one does is not really karma as much as why one does that. So, in understanding what is karma, we have to understand at the outset what we do is not a major consideration for karma, but why we do that, the intent, the motivation, the mindset, the purpose. So, what is really hidden behind our karma or activity is more important in karma, and not what we really physically do it. What we do quite overtly, obviously, is not karma, but the intent behind it, the motivation behind it, which more often it is hidden. So, this is one thing that one needs to be clear about right at the outset. So, what we do is not as much a karma as much as why we do that is karma. The first factor of karma is precisely why we do any activity. The second important factor is what is the effect and consequence of our activity. And the third factor is what exactly we do. So, this is the third factor which becomes the primary factor for us. It is not only third, but it is third insofar as the importance is concerned. I am not referring to factor 1, factor 2, factor 3, but the first factor in the sense the most important. The second factor, which is little lesser in important, and the third factor is further lesser in important. And we make the lesser and lesser factor as the most important factor. This is the flaw. So once again, listen to this. The first factor of karma is precisely why we do something. What is our intention? What is our motive, which we are trying to conceal? The second important factor is the consequence of our activity. The effect and consequence of our activity. We want to do certain things and really don't bother about effect. And in case if we bother about effect, we don't bother about the consequence. So in Karma Siddhanta, the consequence of what we do becomes more important. And the third factor is what we consider as the only factor as to what exactly did we do? What exactly are we doing? So, understand this in perspective. Karma is the sum of why we do, what happens or what would happen by what we do, and dynamically the process of what we do. That is the Kriya behind our execution of that act. What activity have we done of body, mind, etc.? That is the Kriya. So dynamically what we do. So there are three aspects here. So karma is a sum of all. It is total of all. It circumscribes these three factors. So karma is sum of why we do whatever we do, and then what happens or what would happen as a consequence out of what we do, and then what exactly dynamically we have done in what we do. The karma is thus not merely the act or action. Action has been wrongly equated with karma in English, which is a major flaw. The karma must be taken as a technical term here and not an alternatively replaced by the words such as action, acts, and activity. Now listen to this. Therefore, what we do is not karma, but why we do is more important factor for karma to consider. The point is that there is a confusion right at the base of this conceptual knowledge, or the huge tree of knowledge. And then confusion grows exponentially when the basic factor has been wrongly worked out. And the basically and unintrinsically confounding, confusing, intriguing concept of karma becomes more and more so, more and more intriguing, more and more confounding. It is already confounding. But because of the first factor of ours having gone wrong, then all that grows exponentially. What is that which grows? Confusion. We get confounded. Then it becomes more and more intriguing. It becomes more and more agnostic. It is already agnostic but becomes more agnostic. It is already incomprehensible. It becomes more and more incomprehensible. And therefore, even Bhagavad Gita endorses this view when Bhagwan Shri Krishna says, the effects of karma are incomprehensible, unimaginable, and unforeseeable. The karma gati is very intriguing. Ghanaha karma gatihi. So when it comes to an assessment of karma, if you want to assess and evaluate the karma, analyze the karma, the weighting or the weightage given to drive, intent, motive, purpose is very, very, very great. It is greater than the mode of activity. It is greater than the process of activity, mode of activity, dynamics of activity. or even what one has done and as how someone has done it. So, usually we look at what we have done and what someone else has done it in our assessment of act, assessment of activity, assessment of action. So, we want to know what something has done, what someone has done, or what oneself has done. That becomes a very basic factor to analyze and investigate and evaluate, assess our karma. While the most important factor is the intent, the motive, the purpose. If one is not yet convinced that yoga has so much to do with karma, one may turn to Bhagavad Gita. The Gita has been considered as Karma Shastra and Karma Yoga Shastra. This cannot be disputed. But Gita has been also called as Yoga Shastra. If you look at the colophon at the end of every chapter, look at it carefully. Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahmavidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishnarjuna Samvade Amuka Amuka Nama Amuka Amuka Adhyaya Yoga Shastre. This is neglected by the readers of Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is Yoga Shastra. It is Brahmavidya. It is Upanishad by itself. So point is that it is Yoga Shastra. And therefore each chapter is called by some kind of yoga, some form of yoga, such as Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, Karma Yoga, Karma Sannyasa Yoga, etc. etc. Look at any chapter, it is always in the form of yoga. Kshetra Kshetranya Vibhaga Yoga, Abhyasa Yoga, Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, Daivasura Sampatti Vibhaga Yoga, Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga. So, Moksha Sannyasa Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, each chapter, all the 18 chapters are form of yoga. So, Bhagavad Gita becomes one of the most important, most fundamental, most primary, most complete text on yoga. So point is, Gita has been called Yoga Shastra, and that cannot be disputed at all. So Bhagavad Gita gives us 18 forms of yoga because it has 18 chapters. Now, what is core to Gita, Bhagavad Gita? What is core aspects? What is quintessential aspect of Gita, Bhagavad Gita, must be also of yoga. And is of course of yoga as well. So what is quintessential aspect of Bhagavad Gita is quintessential aspect of yoga, and that the yoga that we are considering, Patanjali's yoga. This has given birth to the precept that yoga expects, or yoga is through karma consciousness. Yoga expects us to develop karma consciousness. Until that time, yoga doesn't commence. We might commence what we might think it is yoga, but the yoga doesn't commence unless we understand the importance of karma consciousness. And that is a major consideration on which our yoga is based. So even when yoga has been considered as a profound meditation, this Meditation cannot blossom unless one is well reformed in karma. So don't think it is something of the mind that the mind must meditate. But it all depends, that ability, qualification, or empowerment for meditation or dhyana depends upon karma consciousness evolvement. We need to evolve our karma consciousness. Without karma shuddhi, there won't be any chitta shuddhi, and without chitta being sufficiently pure, the meditation and dhyan is far cry. So, mind must be sufficiently pure, sublime, consecrated, which happens by karma consciousness. That is why the ancient wisdom has been saying that the karmas are performed for chitta shuddhyartha. The Vedic karmas were performed for chitta shuddhyartha, because that is so important for the yoga in the form of meditation to bloom and blossom. So the karmic purity is so important, and that being faultless, there would be faultless karmic culture. A quiet, serene, sublime, ennobled, sanctified mind is turned out by pure karmas. If the mind is purified, it is purified by pure karmas. The karmas purify the mind. Rather than the popular notion that the thought purifies the mind. And it should be understood that the thought itself is a form of karma. Thought is a form of karma of the mind. So in any case, it should be understood that it is karma which purifies the mind. Karma might be of the body, of the mind, of the senses. Karma might be in the form of thought. So these are all karmas. And therefore karma shuddhi becomes so important in spiritual pursuit. So it thus becomes evident that karmic literacy is paramount. Basically, one must develop a habit and attitude to ponder over one's karmas, one's activities, one's actions, and have a preview and review of the karmas. The karmas must have preview wherever possible, as far as possible. Karma must have on view as well, wherever possible, and also review. And then further investigation from the various dimensions which we considered in the last session towards the end, etc., and even today. So the karma must be investigated, karma must be analyzed, karma must be scrutinized, assessed. So this needs to be done more often as one can. It may not be possible everywhere. Because of the dynamics of life, one is so occupied that the time may not be left for all these investigations and interrogations and analysis and assessments. But whenever and wherever possible, we can take a review of the karma that we have performed already, and then try to have these investigative processes, interrogative processes carried out. So we must leave some time for karma to be assessed and not be incessantly in activities. We have to leave some time for the karma to be assessed, investigated, interrogated, scrutinized. So, this begins by seeking answers to certain questions and evolve a database for inquiry. So, when one has done an action, one must ascertain as to what was the state, the condition, the profile, the characteristics, attributes of one's pronoun I. In what my state I performed these karmas. Was I angry? Was I disturbed? Was I sad? Was I delighted? Was I excited? So that state of one's own self, pronoun I, that has to be brought under scrutiny. So basically, the investigation, as I had said earlier, let me recapitulate and mention once again that in taking review at least, because many times we cannot have preview for every act. So many acts are so simultaneous. They are in the very process of our mundane life that we have no time to think, but we have to do. But there can be always an aftermath with regards to at least important activities, important actions. And therefore, we have to have time to have review of our act and activity in the form such as what was done. What was done? How it was done? When it was done? Why it was done? And then alternatively, how could it have been done? When it could have been done? How it could have been done? Why it could have been done? So this also is a part of inquiry that we must have. Anyway, we have done the activity. Activity was done. So therefore, let's try to collect a database on the basis of what was done, number one, how it was done, number two, when it was done, the time and space references, and why it was done, our purpose behind it, our motive behind it. And then, since we are seeking the reformation, we also have to think about how it could have been done so that it could have been better. Why it could have been done with another motive, then it could have been better. So alternatively, we have to again think of it on the basis of how it could have been done, what could have been done, when it could have been done, and why it could have been done. So, I am giving some basis for you to take your certain major activities on an anvil and then investigate it. So slowly we will develop the prudence, organic intelligence, the necessary skill. Once we have this habit of inquiring, at least major activities. So as I said earlier, what we did, what was the consequence of it? So at some stage we will also know that effects and consequences of particular activity. We take some time for the consequence to manifest. So in that case, once again there should be investigation, because now we have the consequences at hand. So If the consequences could have been better, how could have reformed our act, activity, process, purpose, etc. So once in a while this has to be done by a student of yoga. Yoga is not just getting to do certain things, but then there has to be investigation. That process must be taken onto anvil and then investigated, interrogated, and scrutinized. So, this is one of the very orientation aspects of karma. Now we are going to touch upon another aspect of this orientation. There is something called as karma literacy. We think karma is just to be doing. We think the act is only something to be done. But there is something called as karma literacy, because karma has so many dimensions. Activity may not have so much dimension. So we have to learn the activities and then we have to carry out the activities. So we have to develop the skill to carry out an activity. Know the activity and develop the skill of carrying out that activity, and then we think that is accomplishment. But Adhyatma Yoga Shastra tells us about something that can be called as karma literacy. Yoga Shastra provides of course the Yoga Shastra of the lore, classical yoga, provides elaborate classification of karma. In one's own deliberations, one may effectively use the following classification that is going to come now. So you will see how there is literacy of karma. The karma has to be read. The karma is not merely to be done. The karma has to be read. So, if you recall, we considered few classes of karma. That was for literacy process or literacy purpose. So, there is a class of karma called dharma class of karma. Dharma adharma class of karma. Dharma means merit, meritorious, virtuous. So that which helps us collect virtue, merit, is called dharma. And that which goes against that and our merit fizzles out, merit leaks out, merit goes down, and demerit gets collected. That is adharma. So therefore yoga gives us the idea and notion and concept of sattvic, rajasic, tamasic karma. So the karma must be read in the perspective whether it is sattvic karma or rajasic karma or tamasic karma. And the Bhagavad Gita gives us an outline to this as to what are sattvic karmas, what are rajasic karmas, what are tamasic karmas. If you look into the 17th chapter, Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yoga, the verses 11, 12 and 13 characterize sattvic, rajasic, tamasic karmas. So, like what we call as litmus test. So we can have a litmus test of our karma to ascertain whether the karma has been sattvic or rajasic or tamasic, or whether the karma had been sattvic or rajasic and tamasic. So Gita explains this by referring to karma as yajna. The sattvic karma means what Bhagavad Gita describes as sattvic yajna. So this is again very important thing to be noted, that in philosophy the karma and yajna have been equated, and Bhagavad Gita has done this. So it speaks about three kinds of yajnas, which are three kinds of karmas. Our karma needs to be yajna, so that the purification of chitta will take place. So Bhagavad Gita refers to sattvic yajna. Aphalakankshebhi yajno vididrushtaha cha ijyate yashtavyam meveti manaha samadhaya sa satvikaha. What is that sattvic yajna? Means sattvic karma. The karma which adheres to injunctions of shastras, adheres to age-old tradition which has come from generation to generation to generation, and are carried out with high sense of kartavyam, duty-mindedness, that which gives a sense of accomplishment without the expectation of fruit. That is sattvic yajna or sattvic karma. So it gives us contentment. Usually we get contentment with the fruits that we get. When we succeed, we get what we desire, we get what we want, or we get much more than we desire, or we get much more than we want, we get happiness. This is usually what happens to mankind. If you get success or unexpected success, you are happy. So, if you get desire fulfillment to the extent expected or more than expected, you are happy. So, it all depends upon, the assessment of karma depends upon how was the fruit and what was the fruit. If that did not happen to expectation, then we think it is inferior. Whereas in sattvic yajna, one doesn't wait for fruits to be received, fructification to happen. Yet there will be samadhanam. We don't get samadhanam unless we get the fruit. But here, kartavya karma is such a thing that we just get your contentment by having done it, having accomplished it. You don't have to wait, you don't wait for fruition, consequences and happenings out of your doings. So that is called sattvika yajna. So you should not be expecting fruits, and your assessment should not be having eyes on fruits that you receive and for you to become happy. So your happiness should not depend upon the effect of your karma and consequence of your karma, but having done it, there must be contentment. That is sattvic kind of karma. So, that is briefly explained in Bhagavad Gita, the verse 17.11. In 17.12, Bhagwan Shri Krishna says, Abhisandhaya tu phalam dambartham api chaivayat ijjate bharatashreshta tam yajnam viddhi rajasam. So he says, Arjuna, the karma which is for display and presentation, so also with result, with the fruit and the gain in our at sight, it is rajasic karma. It is ostentation in such karma. Such karma expects applause from people. You want the people to be applauding you for what you do and what you have done. Then it becomes rajasic yajna or rajasic karma. If you are waiting for people to acknowledge, people to applaud. And then there is also ostentation in it, dambham. So that is rajasic. Then what is tamasic? Vidihinam, asrushtanam, mantrahinam, adakshanam, shraddha virahitam yajnam tamasam parichakshate. So 17.13 tells us about tamasic yajna, tamasic karma. It is performed without heed to Shastric injunctions, the laid processes, it is without distribution of food and other forms of wealth. There is no dhanam, there is no dakshina. There should be dana dakshina in karma. Others should get fruits out of what we do rather than we getting fruits out of what we do. So we must certainly look at this, that others are reaping fruits out of what we are doing. If we are not doing it, we don't bother about the people at large getting benefit of what we are doing, then that is tamasic. So also shraddha virahitam. There is no shraddha, there is no faith in carrying out such karma. And that is tamasic. So, Bhagavad Gita characterizes sattvic, rajasic, tamasic karma. So, this is the factor that we have to consider. We have to read our activity. How far sattvic, how far rajasic, how far tamasic? What's the percentage of sattva and raja and tama there? So, that is what I said, is to read our karma from the scope of gunatraya, the scope of gunatraya, sattvic or rajasic or tamasic, and how much sattvic and how much rajasic, tamasic, predominantly rajasic or predominantly tamasic or predominantly sattvic, and secondarily also sattvic, rajasic, tamasic, and how much. So it needs that assessment. So in short, we need to be engaged in more sattvic karma and avoid being engaged in rajasic, tamasic karma. So we must be able to read. And of course, Bhagavad Gita has given us some kind of parameters as to when the karma will be sattvic and when the karma will be rajasic and when the karma will be tamasic, or what karma is sattvic, what karma is tamasic, what karma is rajasic, why it is sattvic and why it is rajasic and why it is tamasic. So we must be able to read the karmas from the gunascopi, trigunoscopy, sattva, rajatama, trigunas. So that is one aspect to assess the karmas. Now, second factor to assess the karmas is instrumentation of karma. The karmas are always with some instruments. So that will also tell us about the grade and qualitative aspects of karma. So there are instruments such as kaya, vacha, manasa karma. Kayika karma, vachika karma, manasika karma. And therein we will be able to understand the gradation of karma qualitatively. So, how far the body was involved in karma, how far the mind was involved in karma, how far the speech, the vagendriya was involved in karma. So, you must identify any karma, how much occupied by kayika component, how much occupied by vachika component, how much occupied by manasik component, and then assess each of these components. Kayika component, what was the body constituent in the karma, and try to assess whether we could have done better physically. Then how far the mind was in it, whether we could have done better by the mind involvement, mind investment in our karma, mind participation in our karma. So is the case of vacha, vagendriya. So the karmas are either carried out by body and its motor system and motor functions, or by speech, either express or impress. Speech means it's not that every time we speak out our karma, yet there is a speechly act, and we wrongly take it as mental act. We think I'm thinking over a karma. No, there is a speech what is called as silent speech. You silently plan. When you are planning on a karma, more scrupulously planning on karma, it is not mental act, it is speechly act. You are articulating, you are verbalizing your act mentally, describing your karma mentally using a language and using syntax, using expressions, but that is done silently. So there is organ of speech involved which goes unidentified. We say something was planned, or was well planned, well decided. Then if it was well decided, that means it was not only mind but it was speech to plan out your karma. Many times you plan your program on a piece of paper, you write it down so that you have clarity about the programming of the karma. So that is actually silent speech. So there is vachik karma, which is either express or impress. There may not be Vaikhari speech in every act. We don't loudly speak what we are doing, but we are silently speaking of what we are doing while we are doing. So about speech, Adhyatma tells us about the 4 planes of speech, which is so important to understand here. Vaikhari, which is audible, expressed through the oratory organ. Madhyama, which is inaudible. And Pashyanti, which is the basis of speech. And Para, which is the foundation of speech, the source of speech. So there is source, there is foundation, and then there is Madhyama and then Vaikhari. So Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, Vaikhari is the structure of our speech, and therefore there is speechly act. The karmas are also carried out by the mind through the thought process, through the tendencies, because of tendencies which work on thought process. The Adhyatma and Dharma count all these factors in karma. So what was the contribution of the mind, participation of the mind in your act, which is different than participation and contribution of the speech. So this clarity must be there. So the mind means tendencies, mind means the intents, mind means desires, mind means motives. So all these are constituents of our karma, our activity. Those must be identified with clarity. That's why we need to read how the kaya component, vacha component and manas component are there. So then some karma or activity becomes primarily kayik. It doesn't mean there is no vacha and manas, but primarily kayik. Some karmas are primarily vachik, some karmas are primarily manasik. However, all the 3 are coming in there, participating there. Now, the kayika karma, vachik karma, manasik karma is again delineated in Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapter. So one can look into the 18th chapter, verses 23, 24, 25. These 3 verses tell us about the kayika, vachika, manasika karmas. So the action which is ordained by Dharma Shastra and is not accompanied by the sense of doership has been done without any particularity or prejudice and by one who expects no fruits is called satvika karma. The rajasic karma is then characterized as with some flaws, such as the action, however, which involves much strain, exertion, and is performed by one who is seeking worldly enjoyments, or by a man who has bloated ego, I-ness, or egotism, has been spoken of as rajasic karma. And then tamasic karma, described in the verse there as action which is undertaken through sheer infatuation, delusion, delirium, ignorance, without counting the upshot, loss to oneself, injury and harm to others and one's own self, is declared to be tamasic. So, kaya vacha manasa karma, sattvic, rajasic, tamasic karma. So, these are certain parameters in which we have to assess our karma, use them to assess our karma. Then karma is also assessed by purpose, hetu. This classification of karma is based on purpose. The purpose is known to oneself. Others will not know your purpose. But you will know for yourself, by yourself, the purpose behind your activities. So classification of karma is based on purpose, and the Vedikas are very, very, very particular about this classification. There are 3 levels of karmas in this perspective. These are Nitya, Naimittika, Kamya, Karma. Nitya means daily, regular acts. Naimittika means occasional acts. And Kamya means impelled by desire, impelled by wants. So Nitya karmas are those acts which are to be carried out on a daily basis or occur with regularity and with very high frequency. The Vedic texts speak about Nitya karmas, which are called daily rites, rituals, such as Sandhya Vandhanam. Sandhya Vandhanam is a Nitya karma. And such karmas are to be performed daily. The particularity of these karmas according to Dharma Shastra is, listen carefully, by performing these there is no accumulation of merit, but by neglecting and by avoiding, by evasiveness, you attract demerit. That is very important characteristic of Nitya karma. By doing, you don't amass merit, but by not doing it, by negligence, on account of negligence, then you certainly attract sin. That's how the Nitya karma has been characterized. Thus, the virtue seeker is very particular about it. He doesn't avoid Nitya karmas. The Naimittika karmas occur incidentally, but not on daily basis or regularity. These are the karmas, say fortnightly karmas, fortnightly rites, Pitru karma, the karma on Purnima Amavasya called Darsha Purnamasa. So these are coming incidentally because of Purnima, because of Amavasya. It will be ordained that you must be doing those karmas. Then also certain karmas which come on particular days, such as somebody observing Ekadashi, somebody observing Chaturthi. Then those are by the nimitta, by the incident, by the incidents that it is the fourth day, lunar fourth day, or it is 11th day, then such karmas are there. And then there are karmas on new moon and full moon day as well. Those who observe Mondays or Tuesdays or Thursdays or Saturdays, when they observe it, make it a weekly thing, then it is again incidental because of that incidence that it is Monday or Tuesday or Thursday or Saturday. They fast or do something typical, specific. So those are naimittika karmas. The pitru karmas which come on Amavasya, Purnima Amavasya, or eclipse. Eclipse happens once in a while, and there are certain karmas which have to be observed on eclipse day as ordained by Dharma Shastra. Then there is what is called as Shraddha, the annual death anniversary of our parents and ancestors or the kith and kin. So those are anniversaries, they come annually once. The rituals for malevolent griha dashas. Sometimes the grahas are not propitious to us, they are harming us. Rahu dasha, Ketu dasha, Shukra dasha, Mangal dasha. So when they are malevolent, not benevolent, but malevolent, then there are certain rituals to be carried out. So these are all naimittika karmas, naimittika duties as ordained by Vaidika Dharma. The third kind of karma here is kamya karma. These are carried out under strong gravity of desire, one's personal want or one's family want. Like wife and husband want to beget a child, then they perform certain rituals. And you all know about the Putra Kameshti, which was performed by King Dasharatha to have offsprings in his family, which he did not have. So that is called Kamya Karma. So, of course, these desires should be dharmya and not adharmya. That is another thing. They should not be adharma kamana, there should be dharma kamana. That is what the kamya karma says about. You can't have bad desires and to fulfill bad desires you are doing that. That won't be kamya karma. Kamya karma implies that there must be dharma kamana, not adharma kamana. So these are certain bases of the karma by this kind of scope, the instrument of karma. And of course, on the basis of nitya naimittika kamya karma, the purpose of karma, the why behind the karma. So in our times, when we are not adhering to Vaidika Dharma, our purpose, is the purpose good? Is the purpose personally good and universally good? As a human being, whether the purpose is good or not good. So that must be considered as why are we committing a karma? Is it for personal good or is it for good at large? Or is it opposite of it? Is it going to be harming us or harming the society at large? So what is the purpose? The purpose must be assessed. Now we come to the third factor, which is the karma by dynamics and philosophy. So there is another dimension to assess the karmas. And this is the parameter given by philosophy, particularly Bhagavad Gita. So it is called karma, akarma, vikarma, naishkarmya. So a student of philosophy and student of yoga needs to know this equally importantly. So we will proceed to that, but that will be next time in the next session. So enough for the day. Namaskar all of you.